Alright, here we are again for another Chef J on Sunday. We are going to be doing Philly cheesesteaks, one of my personal recent favorites. I haven't made it much often, but I have made it plenty of times in the past year or so. It is delicious. The cheese sauce tops it off. Now I'm going to take care of some logistics while she, you know, hands over the ingredients real quick. Alright, so we're going to take a look at these real quick. We're going to go over these again later, but just for those who are here early, Philly cheesesteaks, right? Philly cheesesteaks are, in essence, a sandwich with a lot of meat and a lot of veggies. But when you're making a Philly cheesesteak, you have to stick to the rules of a Philly cheesesteak, where you use the right cheese and use the right type of bread, or else it's not Philly cheesesteak, it's your cheesesteak. So we're going with pound strip loin, and if you're in California, this is going to look like carne asada meat. That's what we call it out here with that. And we're going to go, that's the steak. We're making a sauce, and we're going to go into the sauce in more detail, but this sauce is more or less a bechamel sauce, and we put cheeses and a bunch of seasoning, and it's really, really good. We're going to show you how to make that. Then we go over to these peppers. The sauteed peppers and the sauteed onions are really important for this dish because they are half of the flavor in terms of this is a 3-part meal. This is only meat, sauce, and peppers. So you have to do it right. If you want to follow me, chefjelani.com. Subscribing is always a great idea. We're going to be coming out with great stuff all the time. It's Jelani. Remember that. I'm going to keep saying it to you. While we do this, remember a couple things. We're going to be cooking a type of gravy in terms of, I know that sounds scary, but milk gravy and gravy in terms of flour and fat. It's all the same family of how you cook it. And I was not the best at cooking certain gravies, like brown gravies or whatever, but gravies like this, where you have to have a thick, nice sauce, they are perfect for when you're making macaroni or things like this. You need a cheese sauce, and cheese sauce is always important. So I'm going to just introduce you to some of the ingredients. A pane roll. A pane roll is the only roll you can get on our coast, the West Coast, that will be the right kind of bread for this meal. If you're in Philadelphia, you can get the right, Philly roll and make it correctly. This is the closest we can get it. So, provolone cheese. Provolone cheese is another important ingredient in this. You will need this over and over again. Your peppers. Your peppers are very, very important. We're going to go over how to use all these ingredients later. So, I'm assuming more of you are here. Let me take a look real quick. Hey Austin, hey Kim, hey Maya. Everybody's watching it. Hey Zena, nice to see you guys all here. Awesome, awesome. So, first couple things we're going to do is we're going to prep our heat. And when we're prepping our heat, you want to prep a couple different sources. You're making a sauce, which is going to be on a medium-low heat, and your steak is going to be on a higher heat. So come over here with me to the steak, and we're going to put that on first. This steak is carne steak. It is very, very thin, as you can see. It's as thin as you can get it almost. If you want to use a different steak for this, you take your steak, put it in the freezer for about an hour and a half, and then you cut it as thin as this, or else you're not going to get the same kind of texture you need for a Philly cheesesteak, or else you're making it your cheesesteak, but you need to make it a Philly one, and that requires either this meat or freezing your steak, a New York steak, loin steak, whatever steak you need, and you just slice it really thin, and then you let it thaw out, and then you get this kind of effect. So I'm gonna let that sit there. I'm gonna go wash my hands while I prepare to heat up this. Alright, so as we come over, first thing you want to do is start seasoning your meat. At the same time I'm doing this, my pot and my griddle right now, if you want to put your steak on the griddle, you can't do that. But in terms of what we're doing, we want to put it on the griddle. So we take the steak and you take some, season it very, how should I say, very neutrally. You want to go salt, pepper, not too out the box with it. You can go garlic salt if you want, but I'm staying just salt and pepper and leaving it at that. Maybe a little Mexican chili powder. So I go just sprinkle salt, sprinkle pepper, and you go chili powder. So that's my family in the background watching me as I'm live. They want to see me on many things. So with this, just remember, with steak, I prep this by rubbing it in olive oil. That way the seasonings stick a little better. And real simple, salt and pepper, and then you throw it on the grill. So while my grill's heating up, I'm going to sit this over here. Come back. We're going to get started on the good stuff. We're going to get started on this cheese sauce. So this cheese sauce requires cold butter, right? Cold butter. So I have to keep this butter in the fridge. Grab a knife. And how we cut it in the restaurant industry is we look at these little teaspoon markers, or tablespoon markers, I'm sorry. So these tablespoon markers are very, very handy. You just go down like this. We're going to be using 3 tablespoons. So we slice it right there, right? You bring it over. You just crack it off. Peel this away. Throw it in the warm pot. So with this cheese sauce, what we're going to do is we're going to melt this butter, we're going to whisk in flour, and then we're going to whisk in our room temperature milk. And so there's I'm going to explain the temperatures and why we start with certain temperature things in a second. But let me wash my hands while she let you take a look at these ingredients for a second. Excuse me. Okay. Alright, so this is your number one utensil right now. This whisk. This whisk is going to make sure that your sauce doesn't break. And when your sauce breaks, you're going to have to start over. I'm going to teach you how to keep your sauce from breaking and what we're doing. By no means should you feel bad if you can't get this on the first try. It takes me many, many tries. Some versions of this are harder than others. And this is one of the more difficult versions if you're using less butter. But we start with a good amount of butter so that we make sure the flour has enough fat to adhere to, so that we don't break the sauce immediately. We have a good chance to fire it off. So what I have here is all-purpose, unbleached white flour, right? All-purpose, unbleached white flour. And what this makes sure is that you're making this as pure as possible in terms of unsalted butter and pure white flour. And you want this to be the base for your flavor, but we're starting with the most basic thing, which is like a sort of food science. We're making sure that this doesn't break by not adding too much. If you start seasoning things too early, you're going to throw off your chemical reaction. So while this butter melts, if I add this too early, I'll mess it up, but you can come here and look at this. This butter melts. It's on about a 5 out of 6 right now. So I'm going to let that melt a little more, and I'm going to throw my meat on while I throw this on. You throw it on presentation side down every time. So, put this away. Alright, so as I'm looking at the comments, I see why the temperatures that we're using. And we're using these certain temperatures because you can't, we're forcing two things that shouldn't be together. If you think about oil and vinegar, you have to whisk them together in order to get them to make a sauce, because they shouldn't mix. They make a vinaigrette when they do because it's delicious, but they aren't things that chemically should be together. And so with this warm butter and the cold milk, if you're using cold milk and the warm butter, you're making two things that shouldn't be together even more likely to not be together. They're, how do I say, you have to force them to be together, but gently. They're not going to do it if you just pour all your milk in, your butter, and then you try to do it. It's not going to work. They'll just break, and you'll have a big clump of buttery flour in your milk, warm milk sauce. So we go with the warm milk to make it more similar on as many levels as possible chemically, so that when we try to get them to be the same thing, it doesn't fight back as much. If we change the milk or the butter too much before that, we just end up with a broken sauce every time.
What does a broken sauce mean there?
A broken sauce, how do I explain it? I've encountered a broken sauce hundreds of times, so many times. When I first started, every little thing like gravy, if you're making gravy too quick and it breaks, you get those clumps of flour in your gravy, and it's not like a consistent sauce. If you ever had hollandaise sauce, hollandaise is probably one of the hardest things to make without a blender because of how hard it is to get egg and butter to like melt. They don't want it to melt at all. And so you have to put a lot of work in, a lot of hot water to make them really chemically the same. And so a broken sauce is basically when what you're doing doesn't work out and you just have two separate chemicals. You don't have one consistent sauce. You have two separate, when you're making mayonnaise, you're mixing your egg and your oil. But if you don't blend them together, you're just going to have egg and oil in a pot. and it's not going to be a consistent white versus texture. I mean,
Another question is, why a griddle and not a frying pan? What's the difference?
A griddle allows you to have an even surface temperature across the whole. A pan by nature is going to slope up at some point. So even if it doesn't, your grill isn't as wide as your steak is going to be. Your one, heat source in the middle. And so by using this or grill, you're allowing this to have an even temperature all the way across, and it keeps the same temperature by maintaining it electrically. And so this being added won't drop the temperature at any point. It's going to keep it at 400 degrees, which is what I set it at, to cook the steak. And we're cooking the steak to medium well, not well done, medium well, and it's going to carry over into almost well done. So take a look at this butter. You wait till it gets this foamy stage, right? And we start adding our flour. So we take our all-purpose flour, right? And we add it very, very slowly. You add a little bit, and you whisk it. And you keep this on the heat. This stays on the heat, and when you add the milk, you take it off the heat. When you're adding this could break also. Your sauce could break in 2 stages. This stage you add, the key to this stage is using a lot of butter and to whisk very, very fast and add a little bit of flour. So you keep it on the heat, add a little flour, and whisk quickly. Those are my 3 tips for not breaking it right now. So we're whisking, adding whisking. And you have to be patient. What you're looking for is, this is going to just become a thicker butter looking sauce. It's going to stay the same color, but and here's another tip. If you want this to be a different type of sauce, I'm going to show you. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. It's going to turn into a brown butter sauce. And with brown butter sauce, you can smell it, smells like peanuts, and it's butter, but you run it to bring your butter and you don't have to long. So another flavor dimension you can add to this is browning your butter in the sauce to making that a little roasted, kind of flavor. You probably have seen brown butter sauces in high fancy restaurants for fish dishes. It's really popular. So like the classical brown butter sauce has no other things in it. It's just butter and salt and pepper and whatever herbs you want, like tarragon or whatever. But the difficult part was making that delicious. And all the flavor came from browning your butter. So here we are. This is the brown butter. And now we're going to take this room temperature milk. We're going to start whisking it in very, very slowly. Take this off the heat for a second. So the key to this right now is making sure that this is warm and this is going from hot to warm. So you want them to be, as close to temperature as similar. But I'm going to let this cool off a little bit because I was heating it up to make it brown. So I'm going to let that cool a little bit. You guys can go back over this to see what we're going to be doing for this sauce. We just used a tablespoon of butter. We used 3 to make sure that we have a delicious and not broken sauce. 1 tablespoon of flour, that's the same. We're getting to all of this, but here we are now. So I'm going to let you guys can screenshot. She's going to go over, take a look at whatever you want. Screenshot it if you have the time. ChefJelani.com. Remember, Jelani. I'm going to let this cool down for a second, and then I will be right back. Alright, so I'm gonna put my milk. I'll put it right here. Alright, so this is relatively cool now. And we're gonna start adding this milk. The yellow and what's happening is gonna see it this happen. So it's not very quickly. And you have to whisk the thickness back out of it, or else it's gonna clump up on you. Alright. And you see what's happening here? How thick it's getting? You would assume that it would get thinner because we're adding milk, but because of the chemical reaction, you just get a thicker and thicker sauce. And here is where we get to the danger zone. If you don't add the milk in the right ratio, it just turns into clumps. But the key is whisking quickly, adding milk, and you never stop whisking it together because it really, really, really wants to break apart. You might be thinking, Chef Jay, at what point can I calm down and stop whisking it so much? At what point is it a stable sauce that I can, just, chill out with, that it won't break apart? And once it starts getting a creamier texture and it stops thickening up, once it stops thickening and it starts thinning out, that means that it's not reacting as much anymore. It's just accepting the milk now as part of the thinness. And we're getting to that stage now. You can come over here and look at this. Right now, it's just a thick, soupy, right? So this is what you're looking for. No clumps, really thin, but the flour, the flour flavor is most likely cooked away at this point, but we're going to cook it some more to make sure. But that was the hardest part of this whole meal, is making sure that this doesn't break, because this is the basis for our cheese sauce. And we need this to be delicious and nutritious. And you can make this with whatever milk you want. It just has to have a certain amount of fat in it. I wouldn't suggest coconut milk for that reason. But yeah, you can use whatever you want. It doesn't have to have lactose. It just has to be thick in a certain amount. So while put this back on the flame, because it is safe to put on the flame again, while I whisk some more milk in it.
There's someone asking, what's the difference between an electric stove and a gas grill?
All right, that's a good question. I personally, you can't tell my mom this, I personally prefer the gas grill because you can see what your fire is at and you're not going off of what the grill is telling you. But the main difference is you're not working with a live fire, and a live fire means a lot of things. Fires shape themselves in a certain way under a pan, so they are more suitable for things like woks. These are more suitable for things like ceramic dishes, things that don't want to touch real fire because it's a little too harsh, but are cool with just a general heat, like conduction pans and copper and ceramic, things like that. Actually, copper is pretty durable, but copper on an open gas grill you have to maintenance it. You can't just, cook with it and leave it. Cooking with things on a gas grill, you have to make sure that you don't char your things with the fire. Of course, you have to be careful with the fire itself. With these, if you spill water or something on it, it turns off automatically. Little things like that. But I prefer the gas grill in general because you can see the fire with your eyes. You're not going off of. Some of these are hotter than others, I've noticed. Some of these are warmer, some of these are boilers. So you have to keep that in mind at all times, at the same time.
Your mother said, I hear you, child.
She's watching. She got me. She has an iPad. I forgot she has an iPad. All right, well, so I'm going to just show you guys all the ingredients one more time. A serrano pepper. We're not going to be using this in our recipe today because my mom is not as heat tolerable as the rest of the family. So we're going to leave out the serrano peppers. We're going to go straight with the bell peppers and the New Mexican chili powder, which is still a great substitute for heat, but it's not as in your face because you're not biting down directly into it. And our shiitake mushrooms cut, our Parmesan, sea salt, all the things we need. And we're going to start mixing this again because it's heating up. And our meat is off, resting to the side. We let our meat rest for a couple of reasons. And I was taught this by my grandfather. If you're cutting your meat too early, you're just letting everything spill out. And there's no reason to do that. You gotta be patient. So with this is about the time I would start toasting your bread. And there's a way I do this. To break open this bread, it doesn't have a seam. Well, you can see the seam, but it's not, open. I take a fork, not a knife, because that makes an irregular pattern. I forgot who told me this. One of my chefs said if you're gonna open something like bread, you always want to use a fork to make it look more natural, and you're just going down the natural path of the bread. So I just poke it down, and then I open it like that. That way I can keep the bread itself, intact. Right here, it's hard to explain, but you're keeping the integrity of the bread shape. You're not cutting your own shape into the bread. The bread forms its own pits and valleys in here. You don't want to mess that up. You just want to expose it. If you cut into it, you're making your own pits and valleys. Right? And that's not good. You're going to have pieces of bread falling out, and no one wants that. So I'm going to put this in a warm oven. And then we're going to leave that for about 4 or 5 minutes. So we're going to get back to the sauce. Mix in this milk. And there's a couple things you could do here. I'm going to show you what I do, but by no means is this part of the recipe. Here we have 2% reduced fat milk, right? And I'm going to come back with something else in a minute to make this easier on you. If you are scared of using too much flour and breaking your sauce, you can substitute your milk with heavy cream. And our heavy cream looks like this. Heavy whipping cream, right? So that's the same thing as the flour in terms of thickening it up, but it's kind of a cheat where you're making milk sauces. So macaroni and cheese, if you want a thick macaroni and cheese, instead of flour, you can just use whipping cream and do that. Or if you want to go half and half and use more flour, that's up to you. The only benefit to using more flour is it lets you brown your butter for a longer time. And that brown butter, brown flour has its own flavor. But I do this so I don't have to cook my sauce for too long and it'll still be ready. So I keep adding this, keep stirring it down. Now that I have a good amount, I'm going to really turn the heat up to about a medium-high heat because I need to start melting cheese. And provolone is not an easy cheese to melt. It's thick by nature, especially if you're getting it sliced and not shredded. And here we have the provolone. I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is our provolone. We're going to use about 5 or 6 of these with our shredded Parmesan. I'm going to melt it in our milk, cheese, butter sauce to make that delicious. And you whisk it in, it has to melt in at its own pace because you can't really force cheese to melt. While that's happening, while that's heating up, I'm going to show you guys something. We made ice cream earlier. And my niece is dancing in the background for good reason. So we made ice cream earlier. And my first time making ice cream, I will give the credit to my Aunt Lene and my Aunt Vicky for showing me how to do it. We used rock salt and all the other Never seen rock salt before, but used it today. Made some delicious vanilla ice cream. I'm gonna crumble some Oreos on mine. My niece, see, me and her, we think the same. We know how to make ice cream. Don't put Oreos on it. What's the point?
Your cousin Lene said I should have stayed up here. I knew I should have stayed up here. And then she said, how did the ice cream come out?
It came out great, Auntie. It's pretty good.
Sorry you missed it.
It was soft. It was soft serve when it first came out. Then we put it in the freezer for about another 30 minutes, and it became real thick. And it's really good. Still waiting to eat some though. It's eyeballing me in the corner. So while this is heating up, I'm gonna show you guys how to slice this meat for a second. So you grab this. Gonna come over here. I'm gonna grab my knife. 1 second. Alright, so I've told you guys how to do this before, but we're gonna go over it again. So take your meat, and it's been resting for about 10 minutes. And here's the grain. I'm gonna find a way to show you guys the grain. Alright, you can see it pretty well here. Come up in here, wait for it to focus. Alright, so on the tips of the meat, you can see where the grain is going because it, trails off. You can see that it's going this way, right? Get that real close. You can see, right? Alright, cool. You can see it's going that way. It's going up and to the right, or to the left. So we're going to cut it. It's going up and to the right. We're going to cut it this way, across the grain. Right? And medium well, just a little bit over. And I don't know anyone who wouldn't eat that. I know when I was a kid, my grandfather told me well done. I think medium well is the way to go. What do you think?
What do you say?
How do you like your steak?
I don't
He doesn't even eat steak.
medium rare.
How do you like your steak, Dad?
Medium rare.
Medium rare. So I'm gonna just tell you guys a little trick I learned. If you're making steak, and you
What
wanna
kind of steak
know-
is that again?
This is skirt steak. This is carne asada skirt steak. I'm gonna show you guys a little trick. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. I'm gonna show you guys something.
In that drawer, right? Yeah. There's a towel in there. There's a towel.
Found a hat. Alright, so if you want to know how your steak is, there's a quick way to determine this, and I found this out in the Caribbeans. You touch your fingers to your thumb, and then you touch this meat on your thumb real quick. Let me stir this.
You need a little chef.
We can stir that?
Yes, please. That'd be awesome. So my great grandfather's gonna help me with the milk sauce. So you're touching your fingers to your thumb, right? And you feel this meat. You can feel it gets thicker and more flabby in certain areas. When you're getting real rare meats, you want it to feel like this. You touch your index to your thumb, and this is how rare meat should feel. It should feel this soft, real soft. This is medium, a little thicker, right? Medium well, a little thicker, a little harder, and then well done. It's real tough. Just nothing. So rare, you can just, it's nice and flabby. Medium well done. And you're not flexing your finger. All you do is touching it. It naturally gets harder and softer. And it helps me every day. Whenever I'm cooking steak, I just go doop, and then I touch it, and it's real easy because the quickest you can't forget in the second it takes to touch your thumb and touch the meat. It's real fast. So
They want to know if you can do it with chicken too.
with chicken,
Steak.
it's more or less the same, but it's more for steak. Chicken doesn't. It's how should I say? It works with chicken thigh. I'm gonna say that. Doesn't work with chicken because you don't want chicken rare at any point or medium well. You always want chicken 160 degrees or over.
Can you do Philly chicken?
Hmm?
They asked me, can you do Philly chicken?
Philly chicken. Yeah, I think I was just telling someone I was going to do Philly chicken earlier today. I was telling my grandpa I was going to do Philly pulled pork, and we're going to do that. It really comes down to the cheese sauce and the bread, and how you're cutting, how thin your meat is. Other than that, it's up to your own interpretation. But we're going to go back to the sauce. Thank you, Granddad. So you can see this sauce is nice and thick. It's taking form as a sauce. This is a bechamel sauce as it is right now. The bechamel sauce is one of the 5 mother sauces for all sauces. There's bechamel sauce, tomato sauce, the fish sauce with lemon, a pan sauce with proteins, and then another sauce with just vegetable stock. But this is one of the 5 mother sauces with butter, flour, and milk. From this you can make hundreds and hundreds of sauces for all kinds of dishes. This is one of my favorite dishes. Is they just toss asparagus in the form of this and then bake it and then coat it. So good. So from here we're going to add more milk. We're going to thin it out so it can start melting cheese. Because when you add cheese, you know it's going to thicken up. So you don't want it to start as thick as you want it to finish. Because the cheese is going to make it considerably thicker. So add milk, milk, milk. And when I stir milk like this. A figure 8 is when you get advanced. But I don't like doing that because it's too much work. I just go like this. The benefit of doing a figure 8 is you don't spill stuff all over the place. One of my chefs lives and dies by the figure 8, but I don't see the difference. As long as you don't spill anything. So I'll add all this Parmesan first. The Parmesan before the provolone, because the Parmesan melts in the sauce quicker and it helps it incorporate. I'm going to add one little roll of provolone. I'm going to add 2. It's pretty hot right now. So you let that melt in, and then you start seasoning it. And so seasoning, we're going ground black pepper. And this is all to taste. So don't let anyone tell you how much pepper or salt you should use in your own sauce. And kosher salt. Kosher salt always, because you need less of it and get the same salty flavor. And kosher salt, you want to add salt to this because it is mostly just milk and flour. So you want to, a lot of the flavor comes from your brown butter and your salt and pepper. And I add New Mexican chili powder. I'm add just a little bit of this to substitute for the serrano peppers that we're not using. And then, if you want, this is a personal choice, bay leaf. A bay leaf is, you can add it, it's not part of the official recipe, but it is very delicious. And I'm going to add it in there. Just remember, please remember, if you're adding a bay leaf, to not stir your sauce around too much after you add it. You want to make sure that you know where your bay leaf is at all times, and that you don't crush it in your sauce. Something to get that up. So here we are. Take a look at this. This is everything we're using: butter, flour, milk, provolone cheese, Parmesan, kosher salt, black pepper, chili powder, and let me get some garlic. For garlic powder, we're using the New Mexican chili powder, and let me grab some right now. And so we're about to move on to these peppers and onions. If you were here for the stir fry day, you would notice that we cook onions in a certain way and peppers in a certain way and vegetables in general. So we're going to cook the onions first, and then we're going to add the peppers to them because they take longer to cook. And so while this is bubbling away, you want to stir it often because this is a very fragile sauce in terms of heat. You're cooking a lot of milk proteins and butter and cheese, and so at any point the whole thing could burn on all the edges, And that's why we're using this kind of pot. This pot is a ceramic pot.
What flavor does the bay leaf give?
What flavor does a bay leaf give? That's a good question. It's kind of let me see. Flavor of bay leaf. It's kind of like peppery thyme, kind of. It's hard to explain, but bay leaf is it's very pungent, and you don't want to put it directly in anything or like season it on top of something. But it's more of a, you put one in a big pot and it kind of seasons the whole thing. With
Can you explain the bay leaf again in the pot again? Don't do what again to it?
When you're putting the bay leaf in, you'll notice if you come over here, the bay leaf I have sitting on the top of my pot. That way I know where it is and I don't crush it with my whisk. Because at the end of the sauce, I'm going to take this bay leaf out because it's just there for flavor right now. It is not going to contribute in any way in texture or anything. It's just there for that initial bay leaf peppery extra dimension and flavor, which this sauce needs because it's simple in nature, but it's just cheese and milk and stuff. So I'm gonna show you guys the finished results of this. Turn this up, get a couple things ready, but I'm gonna show you guys how to cut these
How long
onions and
does
bell
it take
peppers.
the sauce to cook down?
What did you say?
How long does it take your sauce to cook down?
To cook down the sauce is that 20-minute time right there. The 20 minutes is more or less the time for the sauce. The meat is in that time, but it's 10 minutes. The peppers and onions are about 10 minutes, but the sauce is what takes the longest time to cook all the way. So I'm gonna fire up another pan for these onions and bell peppers, and I'm gonna show you guys how to get those ready. We have a board. So come over here. So yellow onion. I'm gonna take a second to wash off my chef knife. I only use one knife for cutting all of my vegetables and stuff. It's my favorite knife. It's a Mercer, and I have to use this for cutting onions because I don't want that juice spraying in my face. And so I have to use my sharpest, my best knife. So I'm gonna take a second to wash my hands, wash this knife. So, fresh knife, we're going to do it again. So, we're going to go over the tips again for how to cut these onions. If you want more of these tips, you can go to chefjelani.com, where we're going to be having these all the time. And I'm going to go in depth on how to cut these onions. So, I'm going to go quicker than I did in the stir fry episode. So, we're cutting off the top, the bottom, making a slit so we can get the skin. Alright? And that all comes off. And then we have an onion to work with. And then from here, you decide what you're going to do with it. And we're going to be cutting it like this. We're going to be cutting these, right? So the shape of it is pretty important for calling it a Philly cheese. So we're cutting it like this, and then we're looking for this. We don't want too much of this in our onion, this yellow root area. I want to get closer so you guys can see it. The camera's having a hard time focusing, but this right here, this root, you want to take that, hard part out early.
How do you keep your knife sharp?
How do you keep your knife sharp? A couple of good knife tips are, don't keep acidity on your knife. I'm going to take my milk
Granddad
I'll
gonna cook.
turn it on the low heat real quick so it can just simmer and let the flavors incorporate. The milk sauce is pretty much ready, but you're just letting it cook for the flavors and let the flour flavor cook out. So, keeping your knife sharp. I don't. Yeah, so my grandfather is a big fan of keeping your knife sharp. He hounds me on keeping my knife sharp more than my school did. You want to make sure you have a knife sharpener, an old school stick knife sharpener that you can cut your blade on at a 45-degree angle. Every once in a while, even sides every time. Oh, I smell my bread. Alright, so yeah, he's going to grab that for me. So you want to cut your knife on a knife sharpener 45-degree angles, or if you want the electric one, you could just take it real easy, and do it like that. I prefer the manual one because the electric ones are a little harsh. They take off a little too much metal, in my opinion. But don't use too much acidity on your main knife. You want to keep like a separate knife for that. I have a lime knife that I keep for limes. But thank you. We're gonna fire up another piece. Toast. Alright, so remember to go here for all these tips on keeping your knife sharp. I'm gonna do a series on all these things very soon. So, cutting your onion. Your onion, you want to move your bread. So your onion, you want to cut on this edge right here. In the last video, I showed you how to cut this way in dices, where you cut like this. Today we're going to cut fajita style on the long side. So fajita style on the long side is about this thick. I prefer it a little thicker, but people in my family don't like onions as much as I do, so we go on the thin side to make it a little more palatable. So we just go on the thin side, and this is where a sharp knife comes in handy, because you're going to keep the onion juice off of your face, and it glides through like butter. You don't need to do too much work. You get nice even sizes each time. And so we do the same for the pepper. We chop it on the sides and we chop it in fajita style. And I'm going to show you what this sauce looks like. Alright, so cooking these onions. We take the onion and we add it to a pan with little to no oil. We're going to go with very, very little oil here. Yes. So, a little bit of oil. And how you decide how much oil you want is the texture of your onions in the end. If the more oil you use, the softer your onions will be. The less oil you use, they'll have a charred, texture on the outside, and they'll be crispier. But then the longer you cook them, they make their own juices and soften up eventually. But if you know the difference between caramelized and sautéed onions, we'll go over that in a separate episode. But it's a very maybe we might make French onion soup one day to go over that whole beast of how to give your onions their own unique flavor just in themselves. Cook onions for long enough, they turn brown and delicious, but you have to do it the right way, or else they just burn. So we got a nice hot pan. We're gonna add these onions in. And we're gonna wait for them to soften up a little bit. Oh, got me down. So after these soften up a little bit, we add salt. And we salt in stages, and we do that because your salt takes on different flavors the longer it cooks. So
They're asking the less oil you use, the crispier the onions will get.
yes. Yes. In the long run, the less oil, the crispier. As you see now, these onions they have the brown on the edges, and they're turning translucent already. These right here are what you would use if you want to have them on a fresh taco or something and you want them still crispy but not raw. You saute them in no oil for a second, and then eventually the juices from them will seep into the pan and make their own thing happen. So, you toss them for a second. You can see they're getting a little translucent now. They get more and more brown and wilted.
Toss is better than stir.
You can stir them, but if you stir them, use this. If you're going to stir them, use this to be gentle. Just push them around. You know, just glide them. You're not really stirring it like a sauce. You're just rearranging them. The reason I toss it is it's hard to get the back side of the onion to the front side. And that goes with a lot of things. A lot of pan dishes. If you're like rice and chili and all this stuff in pan, and that bottom layer is just really, really not moving, the easiest thing to do is just flip the whole thing over and just get it.
People don't have hands like you.
The only thing you can do, I guess, is there's fish spatulas. A fish spatula is a really handy tool. It goes long and then it goes down and then all the way across. And so you can just flip entire dishes, which you can't usually do with a small spatula. And so we cook these for a little bit. And this part is really up to you how long you cook these all for. But I'm going to do it for another minute or so.
That's your sauce.
Yeah, so this is the finished sauce after it's been cooking for a little bit. You can see the cheesy, it kind of has a cheesiness in itself. It's still milky, but it's cheesy milky. It's really good. I'm not sure how to describe a cheese sauce, but it's like it's what Velveeta is trying to sell you in the box. You know, the Velveeta cheesy, saucy, or you can just do this. It's really simple. If you don't want to do the whole, flour butter thing, just get some heavy cream and some butter.
So this is steps of making everything for those that just do veggies. Can you just veggie and cheese? Can you do a?
So a vegetarian, I was thinking about this today, and don't. I'm gonna come out with the vegetarian one soon, but I'm thinking roasted tomatoes. Use 2 different types of mushrooms, shiitake and maybe portobello. Use the onion. You probably use I would say spinach, and then you use the same cheese sauce, maybe artichoke in the cheese sauce to make it, a little flavorful. That's what I would say, artichoke and mushrooms and roasted tomatoes and stuff. But it's hard to say. It's kind of a classic. Randy, I'm gonna just tell you honestly, I have no idea what caisson is. Caisson? She says caisson. You know what caisson is?
No.
You know what caisson? Caisson? No, nobody knows. School me. What's it mean? Queso.
Queso? That's cheese.
Wait, did you put it in on accident?
Yes.
Oh, she didn't mean caisson. She meant queso.
That's cheese.
Man, she's trying to trick us. Okay. She just had she accidentally put the in. I see. So, I was about to say, I've never heard of caisson. Maybe I just haven't explored enough of the world yet. So, queso. It's kind of the same. The way they make it is more or less the same. They make a bechamel and they add cheese. They add different cheeses. You would just add Mexican cheeses instead of our cheeses. So this is done. We just add cheese. After this, you just add as much cheese as you want and make it cheesier and cheesier and cheesier. And keep it on low heat and melt it. And then you pour it over whatever you want. We're going to be pouring it over steak. And cheese and steak, I'm sure you may have heard of it together in fondue. Fondue, they make a lot of this stuff, this cheese sauce. Bless you. They make a lot of different cheese sauces. It's one of my sous chefs. The pepper, the chili powder, all in his nose. My mom has that a lot. Whenever she's helping me clean up, she coughs and sneezes. So, our onions are cooking down. We're going to add our fresh peppers, right? And we're going to toss them in. And when you toss them in, a couple things are happening. You cook your peppers with your onions so that your onion flavor gets on your peppers. And to ensure that happens, we add a little bit of oil. This is where we add a little oil to the side of the pan, right? I add it to the side. This is one of my tricks. Add it to the side, let it heat up, and then you fold it in later, and then everything's good. Putting cold oil on your hot vegetables kind of leaves a film on them that you don't want. I've done that personally too many times. So I let it heat up on the side and then fold it all together afterwards with this. And so here's also where you would add your mushrooms if you want to. I love mushrooms. They're delicious, but I prefer them to be a little bit more raw. I don't like cooked mushrooms too much. The mushiness reminds me of peas. I don't really like peas. So we're going to add to this again some salt and pepper. And then we fold it in with the oil. And I believe I explained on, what was it? I think it was Taco Day, how wet and dry seasonings all work together. You want to hit your dish with your wet seasoning so that when you hit the dry seasoning, it's, my niece is cracking me up. When you hit it with the wet seasoning, the dry seasoning sticks to it. If you go in the opposite direction, you're not only hindering yourself, but you're making it worse by washing off your dry seasoning with the wet. So if I go salt, pepper, then oil, I just get salt and pepper in my oil, and then it's not the same idea. So, we toss these for a second. For more of these tips, chefjelani.com, Jelani. That stuff in my hand. chefjelani.com. We're going to be doing stuff. The holiday season is going to be great. We're going to be coming out with stuff all the time. So, right about here is where you want it. The onions nice and caramelized and sauteed. Caramelized is almost burnt, but not really. They're delicious. And then your peppers are cooking, and they're going to cook in this heat. We're going to turn it low so that they can just sit there and enjoy that. At any point, you can add garlic, but that won't make it Philly cheesesteak. That'll be your cheesesteak. Philly cheesesteak doesn't use garlic too much. You can use garlic powder, as I said up here. If you're going to use the garlic, I will use garlic powder in your sauce, but then, adjust accordingly. Garlic powder, poblano peppers. This is my personal recipe. This is from me. This is what I would do. I'm making it for the family now, as you can tell. But the poblano peppers, if you're here with the ceviche day, we use peppers, and my mom had a hot mouth situation, so we're staying away from those. But I know someone's going to want to bite afterwards. So I'm upstairs. So we have our bread out the toaster, and what you're looking for is you want to have your bread, have a lot of bread in the middle. If you're not in a region that has the right bread, you're just looking for a bread that's not hard on the outside, that's really soft all the way through, but isn't hollow. How should I say, not hollow, just it's not fluffy and airy. It has to be nice and thick and ready, because you want to load it with meat and cheese and it has to handle that. Something like this, and you just put this stuff on top, and you try to close it. You don't start small, right? And that's the essence of this. It's a feeling that comes with this sandwich. Not just the ingredients. You have to make it a certain way and cover it with a certain amount of cheese. If you don't want to use this, I found out while I was researching, Cheese Whiz was the original version of this cheese sauce. This is my own recipe. This isn't from anywhere. This usually is just the meat, the peppers, and then you put your cheese on top. But there's the people in Philly who say it's cheese, and some people say it's Cheese Whiz. So I cut up the middle, and I made cheese sauce. And I figured that would, satisfy everyone's variables. And I love cheese sauce. It's one of my favorite things to make. I started making it when I was making macaroni, and I would put bacon in my cheese sauce and then cover all my macaroni with it and bake it in sections.
Brandy said she scooped the middle out to make room.
Scoop the middle of what out?
The bread.
Oh, I see. To make bread for more steak and cheese. I see. So if you're going to scoop the bread out, we're going to make something called vampire dip very soon, where we learn how to make bread bowls, and then we fill the bread bowls with stuff. Which is the idea. You just don't want the bread, you want the goods. And so you choose your demons. So we're going to add the mushrooms now. Now this is pretty much cooked. We're on low heat. Just toss in the mushrooms. And I more or less just toss these to have all my onions and peppers on top of my mushrooms, so the heat from them do most of the work. So take your bread, and there's a couple ways to do this, but my personal favorite is cheese, sauce, meat, peppers, sauce, cheese sauce, and then you're good. But if you want to do it the regular way, you just go meat, peppers, sauce, and then you're good. Let me go wash my hands and take a couple precautions first before I get into this with the meats. Remember guys, proper hand washing is always important. Okay, so to assemble this sandwich, you want to need a large plate. I had to go get a bigger plate because I'm going to load this sandwich up. So you need a large plate. You need a large plate for a couple reasons. All of this is going to be, filled with stuff, and all of this is going to have stuff on it too. It's more of a meal than a sandwich. So we're going to go our meat. What should I say? I had a couple revelations while cooking this. I'm going to take this. I'm going to cut it across the grain one more time. This way. That way when I'm eating this, I can pick up my meat and put it back on my sandwich as I'm eating, like a topping. Less like an actual heat meal. So I put on my meat, and don't worry about too much about the temperature of it coming off, because you're covering it in the hot peppers. So this is the start. You want to pile it on there. This is the core. And you come over here. Get some of this. And you start spooning it over. The more and more I eat this, the more and more I like this cheese sauce. It's really good. There's a lot of cheese in it. I'm not sure if you can see that, but the cheese is making this really thick. So, there's our cheesesteak. This is the one meal where I encourage you to have a messy plate. Please. This comes with the territory of a cheesesteak. It's having a little bit of that rustic flair to it. So, I'm at in between the rock and a hard place, guys. I think the only person in my house that likes this is me. You like Philly cheesesteak, Dad?
Yes, I will eat your
Hey,
food.
Dad, come over.
No.
Okay.
No.
Stop.
I got.
Greedy.
She got some this time. We got a lot of cheesesteak to go around. So, let's see.
Look, here come mama.
Here come mama. Here come mama.
Let's see. How is it?
She done ran down the stairs.
Let's see who's coming.
Gotta have a bite. Is it ready yet? So, I've been getting dressed for a party because it's that time of the year. And,
Look at that. Look at that.
oh my God, this looks so good. So, I'm going to break it right here so I can get a fresh bite.
Can everybody have a piece?
Onions. Yes, everyone can have a piece. Why not share? Why not share? We've all been waiting on it. Oh, wow. Oh my God, this cheese sauce is creamy. I can feel it.
we have a lot of meat and bread for everybody.
So
Uh,
I have been watching and waiting. You guys should be here. Why don't you make an excuse to come over on Sundays? No?
so
Oh
the
my
cheese.
God, the peppers are popping. The cheese, my father said he doesn't even eat beef and he wants a bite of the sandwich. That cheese sauce is insane. Now, this is your actual recipe.
Yes, this is all.
You're on TV. Stop choking yourself, girl.
I'm not going to eat when I go to the party tonight. I don't need to eat. They will not have anything as good as this. I don't know. My father's saying I can't hear him. I'm chewing.
Let me know.
What? Okay, so I know I'm being bad, but I just gotta. Because when you're at home, you can do that. That's right there. That's the business.
They said they can all see you running, sliding to the Philly cheesesteak desk. So the cheese sauce, as you can tell, is one of the main ingredients to this. It's just cheese and deliciousness.
That's a good example.
So
You see your plate?
this is the leftovers.
That's the plate right there. But
I
hold
told
on.
you right here and right here. That's why I need a big plate.
Yes, you do. And then you just have some bread. You have extra bread, and you just put it right there. I'm just.
So guys, I'm gonna go up in these comments real quick and look at what you guys are saying. Let's look at these real quick. So a quick recap of what happened here. Philly cheesesteak with my own provolone sauce with sauteed peppers and the onions. So if you can tell, this is one of the most simple dishes we've done right now in terms of ingredients. It's sauce, peppers, onions, and steak. But it makes itself, known by the sauce. I think the sauce. This is a take on my mac and cheese sauce that I made for this. So if you want more of this, Chef Jelani, we go live every Sunday. Chef Jelani, Jelani.
Go Cowboys!
So my family is making a ruckus. So we're about to be done here. Hope you guys enjoy what we're doing. So if you want to make these Philly cheesesteaks, I highly encourage you to. And we will be here next Sunday doing it again. I think my niece has something she wants to show you. She made a sign for me that said follow Chef J. She's so sweet. I love her so much. So we're doing this every week. Next week we're doing salmon sliders. Yeah, salmon sliders next week with the garlic aioli, pineapple slaw, and the grilled salmon. It's gonna be really good. Yeah, tune in for that. Every week we're doing something different. Yeah, so please, chefjelani.com, Chef Jelani, Jelani. We will see you again next week. See you.